right, so one of the things I haven't talked about for a long time is science and the Bible. And it's interesting many times when you hear people start to talk about it, it's science versus the Bible. You ever hear it that way? You know, like how could they be? So how do you explain a miracle to a scientist? And how do you explain science to a Christian? Now, there are Christians, believers, Messianic Jews who believe in science and they accept science, and there's a pick and choose. You know, like, yeah, I believe in the old earth, I believe in the young earth, yeah, I believe in the period between this, and they have their own gig, okay? But there's not a whole lot of scientists who are either one way or the other. Most of the scientists are either one way or the other. They're not like, well, I'm a scientist and I believe this, but I also believe the Bible is this. Something's wrong with that picture. Something's wrong with that picture. So how do you use realistic reasoning and use your brain and still believe in things like a virgin giving birth to a child, shriveled hands, blind eyes being totally restored, a man walking out on the water, a man dead for 4 days, walking out of a cave? How do you explain those things? Well, we all know. Is that me? Are you pushing the things in there? We all know that the virgin birth, you know, that's probably the dumbest one of all. Ask anyone who doesn't believe. You really believe in the virgin birth? Are you kidding me? Have you ever heard that one? You really believe that? Like this virgin, this girl that she never, yeah, right? Yeah, right. Well, in order for Mary, to have pulled this off, would have had to been a miracle, because she didn't possess one of the chromosomes for a boy. Anybody remember what chromosome that is? The Y. She didn't possess it. So how did this boy get born? It's either a lie of how it happened, or God did a miracle, which is unacceptable to science. You could say the same thing for the resurrection and walking on water and coming out of a cave after 4 days being dead, and so on. But think about this. If God can create life out of nothing, what is cancer to him? What is the virgin birth to him? It's a piece of cake. It's hard, it's very hard for people who are not believers if they're not willing to at least look at the evidence with an open mind. And that's the hard part, is the open mind. Because the closed mind has already made up their mind, so it doesn't matter what you say to them. And where I'm going with this teaching tonight is not science versus the Bible. It's I want to, at the end, ask you your opinion, and I'll be asking you to speak up about how we can help people who don't believe and who think we're idiots and crazy and they think God is like I used to think, for people who need a crutch. Many people think that the Bible and science are at odds with one another, and that that's just the way it is, and that's the way it should be, and that's just not true. The scientists, the biggest names that you know, almost all of those scientists were all Christians. Now, part of the issue is not long ago, it's still true today, but people tended to worship nature. And when you worship nature, heaven forbid that you take a tree apart to study it, because it's part of God. You're messing with God. The ancient religions believed in something called pantheism, which is what I'm talking about. And that's the belief that God is not only in everything, but everything is God. Have you heard that recently at all? One person? Two people? A few people? Okay. So it's not a dead thought. It's just not a dead thought. It's been revived in our culture. It has hindered scientific research in many ways because it considers natural objects as things to be worshipped instead of natural objects, things that God created that are not God himself. The first thing that people in search of truth need to consider is that nature is good. Can we all agree nature is good? But it is not God. It has design. Nature is extremely intricate. Carlos, can you do me a favor? I don't know what number these are on, but turn them up 2 degrees. That'll warm it up in here. Thank you. Nature, as I said, not only is good, but nature has an intricate design. It is unbelievably intricate because it was created by an intelligent being, not because it is the intelligent being. The laws of nature are dependable, they're orderly, they're intricate, because their creator is such. People name, these are names that you would know. Copernicus, Galileo, Isaac Newton, and many others were men of deep personal faith and conviction. Isaac Newton wrote that the world arose from the perfectly free will of God, and that we must investigate the world by observations and experiments. That's what Isaac Newton wrote. Copernicus was convinced that the world, which the God he loved had made, was mathematically precise, and Galileo was a man of deep faith who believed he was revealing the laws of God in his work. Did you hear that? I think somebody's on the internet. If you're in this room, you should be watching me, not your internet. Now these are great men, and they're men of faith. And they basically paved the way for modern scientific thinking. They understood that at the center of the universe, at the center of all of this, is an intelligence beyond our understanding, a divine intelligence. They understood and understand, and now we understand, if we use our brain, that life is not random, it's not chaotic, it's not oops. It didn't come out of the slime or the primordial slime or any of those other things. But there is, in fact, a design and a purpose built into the universe. Period, end of story. Now these guys, Galileo, Copernicus, and so on, learned this from God through his Holy Spirit and through his Word. So, would you consider them to be scientists? Sort of. They just studied a different book, right? And decided to believe that book. Now, the second thing that people in search of truth need to consider, and this is probably for people, I think, looking for a healing, should really be listening to this. Miracles are not things that are done outside of or against natural law, but according to natural law. Let me say that again. Miracles are not things done outside of or against natural law, but according to natural law. I just want you to let that sink in for a second. There's a scientist you may know, William Lane Craig. He gives an example. I'll read it so I say it perfectly right. If you drop an object, it will fall to the earth. See how smart he is? He's a scientist. Very smart guy. But if an apple falls from a tree and you reach out and catch it before it reaches the ground, you're not violating and you're not negating the law of gravity. You're merely intervening. Apple falls from the tree. It's on the way down. You, with your free will, intercede, grab it before it hits the ground. You're not violating natural law. You're not negating natural law. You're merely intervening. He goes on to say, catching the apple doesn't overturn the law of gravity or require the formulation of a new law. It's merely the intervention of a person with free will who overrides the natural causes operative in that particular circumstance. And that essentially, and listen to the sentence, and that essentially is what God does when he causes a miracle to occur.